Welcome back to Monitors Unboxed. A couple of days ago, I published my review of the MSI MPG 274UR DFW E16M. Yes, I'm looking at the name over here because it is that bad. And one of the complaints I had about this monitor was indeed the product name. I said that it was too long, too complicated, impossible to remember, but perhaps I even undersold that a little bit because I was checking the comments on the video and a couple of people had pointed out that there are actually some very similar monitor names to this particular product that MSI are also selling, adding to the confusion around the name. They also sell the MAG274UPDF E16M. That appears to be a similar mini LED monitor, but sort of a black version. They sell the MAG274URFW, which is a rapid IPS panel. Display HDR 400 though, so there's obviously no mini LED backlight or dual mode there. And they also sell the MAG272URDF E16, so not E16M, no white model. And this appears to be a dual mode monitor, same 4K rapid IPS sort of spec, but without the mini LED backlight. And so looking through this, I thought, okay, pretty bad names, MSI making too many monitors and that sort of thing. But how bad is this naming problem that MSI has? So what I did was I fired up the MSI website and I went to the monitors section and I enabled all of the different series that MSI sells. So they sell 4 different series: MEG, MPG, MAG, and G series among gaming monitors. So gaming monitors only. And it became very clear why MSI monitor names are so bad. And the simple reason is they have got currently listed on their website 147 models. 147 models. How on earth do you as a company name products to be memorable if you make 147 different variants? It's going to be incredibly difficult to have memorable names when you just spam the market with so many different products. And even just here on the first page, so I have sort of this product page by names, so all the monitors are listed here by name. And you can immediately start to see the problem just from the first couple of monitors. MSI sell the G2412, the G2412F, the G2422, G2422C, G242C, so remove one of the 2s in that model name, and the list goes on. You scroll down, G24C4E2, G24C6E2, G24C6PE2. And there's page after page after page of monitors that are all named in a very similar way. And so this got me thinking, how bad really is this problem? What on earth are MSI doing? And do they really need all of these different monitor models? So one of the first tells to me that I looked at was OLEDs. Now, MSI only make QD-OLED monitors. And you can see here that they've got quite a few different models. They've got 2 pages worth. And indeed, they're telling me that they've got 24 different QD-OLED monitors. Now, the thing is, though, is that there's actually only 11 different QD-OLED panel types, as far as I'm aware. There's currently the 27-inch 1440p QD-OLED, which is available in 4 different refresh rates: 240, 280, 360, and 500 hertz. There's also the 27-inch 4K 240 hertz model. There's the 32-inch 4K, 240, and 165 hertz variants. And then there's 4 different ultra-wides, the 34-inch in 175 and 240 hertz, and then the 49-inch in 144 and 240 hertz as well. So to make 24 different QD-OLED monitors, there's got to be some pretty significant overlap across these products, which is probably unnecessary and adding a lot of bloat to MSI's product lineup. So if we have a look here across some of the products, some of these make sense. For example, MAG271QP QD-OLED X28. This is a product that I think has quite a poor name in general, but then you have a look over here and they've also got the 272QPW QD-OLED X28. So they're essentially making a white model of the same monitor. So the black model for some reason is 271 instead of 272, but basically white model, black model. That sort of thing makes sense. But then we look at some of the other models in general, and for example here, MSI sell the MAG271QP X24. They also sell the MAG273QP X24 and the MAG271QPX E2. And if you look at the specifications for all three of these monitors, they're all basically the same. They all use the exact same 1440p 240Hz QD-OLED panel. And you can see here from the specifications that they've all got very similar specs listed. So this begs the question, why does MSI make three different versions of effectively the same monitor? There's no need to have three different models. The 271QP XE2, this is the first model that came out into the market, and then they refreshed it with these two variants here, which, I mean, look effectively the same. I don't really know what the difference is between the 271 and the 273. It could be something to do with, I don't know, just guessing here, looking at the specs, maybe USB ports or something, but this one has two HDMI 2.1 ports, this one two HDMI 2.1 and one display port. So it's looking like the specs on these two monitors are pretty much identical. Maybe it's something in the design, so let's have a look there. Yes, slightly different design on the 273 model compared to the 271. Again, I don't really know why you would need these two models on the market. That's just adding to the confusion and makes it more difficult to name products when you've got two that are basically exactly the same. Then you add on the E2 as well, which looks the same as the 273 model from memory. So again, like the 271 model looks pretty much the same as the 271 E2 model. Then they make a 273 that looks different. Makes no sense to me. And then to make matters worse, you scroll down this sort of product page here as well, and there's some monitors that have some pretty similar names. They've got a 272 UP-X24, but this is actually a 4K model. So changing one single letter from Q to U makes it a 4K monitor, of course. So very easy to get confused between, you've got a 271 QP, and then a 272 UP, and then a 273 QP. And if you weren't familiar with the model names, you might think that 273 is better than 272, but that's not the case. The U makes it a 4K monitor, and so higher resolution, more expensive product. And you can see this across many different sort of variants of MSI monitors that they've got here on the market. For example, the 321 UP QD OLED and the 321 UPX. The 321 UP is 165 Hertz. The 321 UPX is 4K 240 Hertz. You might go, okay, two different models, similar sort of names, but those are two different specs. But then they also make the 322 UP E16, which, as far as I can tell, is using the exact same panel as the 321 UP without the E16 on the end. Very similar specifications. I'm sure if we check, there might be some slight differences in terms of things like USB ports and that sort of thing. So this one has a Type-C with DP alt mode. This one also has a Type-C with DP alt mode. I'm not seeing huge differences there. I thought it might be things like the inputs and that sort of thing, but it looks pretty much like the same monitor to me. So again, making two models that are effectively the same. And then, you know, we could go on. There's more examples of this. They've got two models that use the 500 Hertz 1440p QD OLED panel. The 272 URX is very similar to the 272 UP that we were looking at previously. Again, two models using the 4K 240 Hertz panel. And this is, again, we're just focusing right now on the QD OLED variants. We're not even getting into the multitude of IPS LCDs, VA LCDs that MSI make that are all very, very similar. And so this is just some really bizarre stuff from MSI. I mean, like I've just fired up one of the pages. We're on page 5. That was a random page. You can see here two different models from MSI. The MAG272F X24, the 272PF X24. These look like very similar monitors. They're both using 240 Hertz panels. I believe these are 1080p monitors. So if you look at the specs, both using 1080p, 240 Hertz panels. One of them has a slightly different stand design. This might be a model with, say, a height adjustable stand. Yes, they're using this sort of standard height adjustable stand. The model that does not have the P in the name seems to have a fixed stand. So again, you have to ask yourself, was it really necessary to split those two models into two different variants that you have to name? I'm not 100% sure about that. So this is really the crux of the issue with why monitors are so difficult to name and why I struggle so much with products like MSI monitor names, is just because they make far too many of them. But then if we dial things down a little further and we look at exactly how they're naming some of these monitors, you would have seen that a lot of them have just very small changes to the numbers or letters. For example, we go back to things like the 321 UP versus the 321 322 UP E16. So the main monitor number, I guess, has been changed by one number from 321 to 322, and then they've added E16 onto the end. But the MAG part is exactly the same for both models. So there's a lot of bloat here with some of these names that is unnecessary, that makes it even more difficult to remember. So MSI has all these different series. They've got the G series, which is their sort of entry-level line, and then you go up towards MAG, MPG, and MEG. Now, interestingly, MSI don't make a ton of MEG monitors. If you look at their series, I believe there's only one monitor on the market from MSI that is MEG. So they're basically just going, well, we don't really care about MEG. So this means that they have to consolidate everything into the MPG and specifically MAG lines. So you've got all these monitors here that are supposedly MPG monitors. And then you've got the MAG series, which I think has something like 90 models, if we can just configure the website to show just the MAG series. Yeah, so the MAG lineup has 92 monitors, and yeah, lots of them have very similar names. So I would say to MSI, do you really need to include the MAG, MPG part in your monitor names? Does that actually do anything for the brand? I'm not sure how many people would actually know the ordering of tiers in MSI's product series. You know, did you know before I told you just now that the MPG series is a level above the MAG series and that above the MPG series is the MEG series? It's not immediately clear from those names alone that MEG is above MPG, which is above MAG. You kind of have to go on the specifications based on that. So that seems like a very redundant part of the name to me. And then, yeah, like minor changes, like what is the difference between the 1, 2, and the 3 in some of the product names? Is that necessary? All the OLEDs have QD OLED listed in the product name. That adds to the length and the bloat. And then they've decided to go with these sort of, you know, X28, X24s, referring to the refresh rate at the end of some of the models. But then previously they were using E2. So X24, which was used for the new model, means the same as E2 that was used for the old model. They've got E16, which refers to the 165 hertz refresh rate, but they use X24 for the higher refresh rate models. And that's on top of 271QP, 271QPX. You know, the difference previously used to be that the 271QP model was like the lower refresh rate model, or the one with, you know, reduced specifications. The QPX model was the higher refresh rate model, but now they had to differentiate that with X24, X28 and stuff like that at the end. Was that necessary? So this is all a mess. I've always said to companies when it comes to naming monitors that the name should be extremely memorable. So if we review a product on Monitor Unbox that we want to recommend, we think it's a good product, it should be easy for someone to recommend that to a friend who's maybe not a person that's really into PC gaming, doesn't know all the specs, doesn't know all the monitors that are available. You should be able to go, hey, I recommend the MSI whatever it is monitor. That's a great one to get for your gaming rig. Or alternatively, if you buy that monitor and you think it's a really good product and you want to recommend that again to a friend or someone else on the internet or something like that, it should be very easy for that person to remember what monitor they've got and then recommend that on to someone else. This is going to build word of mouth. It's going to build brand awareness for the products that you've got. But if you have to look up the product name, you're not super sure, like, oh, I bought the MAG. What was it? It was a 27. Now, was it 271? Was it 272? I don't really remember. Was it QPX? Was it QP? Was it X24? Was it X28? Not 100% sure. And that's the problem that these monitor manufacturers have with names. So my suggestion has always been make the monitor names unique, make them memorable, make them short. And there are some brands that have done this reasonably well. Gigabyte M27Q is quite a memorable name, and M27U that they've used for the 4K monitors. Nice and short. There's no bloat with things like MAG, MPG in those names, but they're still, you know, they're model names, letters, numbers, word salad sort of thing, and they do get diluted over time. For example, Samsung, they released the Odyssey G7 series originally, just the Odyssey G7, really easy name to remember. That was a 1440p, I think it was 240 hertz VA monitor at the time, very good quality product. We recommended it, but then they started diluting that over time. They made multiple versions under the same name. So we got the Odyssey G7 refreshed series for new series. I think they added a 4K model. They started adding all sorts of stuff to that series. And so it dilutes it and makes it more difficult to figure out what product that you've got. But the issue is that if you're trying to make unique product names, but then you make over 140 different monitor models, you basically can't do that. It's impossible. There's too many monitor names, too many models that you have to come up with. And so maybe MSI could do more unique model names for some of the highest end premium models, and that would make it easier for, some of those, you want people to buy a premium product. If you've got a 4K OLED, you want people to buy that because it costs $900 or whatever. So maybe having some unique names for those top tier products would make sense. But then if you look at something like the MAG series, which is filled with IPS LCDs, and as well, the G series, which is their entry-level monitors, they've got 38 of those listed right now, and a lot of them have very similar specifications, lots of 1080p 144 hertz, lots of 1080p 180 hertz monitors, and so on. It becomes very difficult to come up with individual and unique names for those models. And so that's really the crux of the problem. MSI makes too many monitors, and this can be, I'm sure, applied to many other brands as well. They make too many models, and that's why the monitor names are so bad. They're trying to differentiate them, make them searchable. They can list them as different model numbers, model codes, but that means that you can't give them unique names because you have to think about too many of them. So I'm sure there is a solution there, as I've suggested. Potentially just naming the highest end monitors with unique model names would solve a lot of this. I think as well MSI could do with consolidating their lineup. There's a lot of duplicate monitors here that have very similar specifications that don't really seem necessary. So it'll be easier to name monitors if you just focus in on a smaller number of models, a couple using each, well, not even a couple using each panel, really one using each panel if possible, and not as many variants for things like height adjustable stand or fixed stand. I guess they're sort of tossing up things like the fixed stand probably saves them a few dollars on manufacturing costs, but is that worth it to make the monitor models more confusing for buyers? And certainly for the high-end monitors, I would argue that having two different variants that look very similar is not really worth it to make it more confusing for people to purchase these products. So yeah, that's the real issue with MSI monitor model names. Just wanted to get in front of the camera using the podcast setup for this video just to go through and sort of look at the current state of things, because it's not good. I think things can definitely improve, but hopefully this has sort of explained why the monitor names are so bad. We'll have more monitor content right here on Monitors Unboxed in the coming days, so stay tuned for that. But until then, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching this, I guess, rambling video. This is an unscripted video, just got in front of the camera. If you do want to support Monitors Unboxed, we've got Patreon. You can sign up to that, support the channel. Benefits like Discord community, monthly live streams, plenty of other stuff. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.